On this episode of the show, I have with me Alex Daniels. He is founder and CTO at Predoc, and we're going to be talking about, well, a little bit about what Predoc does, but also a lot about team building and how Alex is going to go about managing growth within the company and managing culture and a couple other aspects in there as well. And also going to touch on how equity comes into play when we're talking about building that team and want to hold on to your strongest players. Alex, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me today, Amir.
Absolutely. All right, before we start, can you tell everyone what Predoc does?
Absolutely. So Predoc was built on the mission to solve healthcare data from the ground up instead of the top down. We automate the record retrieval process. We automate the extraction and storing of data, and then in the end, the analysis that leads to not a bunch of endpoint solutions, but a larger HIMSS suite solution.
All right. Awesome. That has got to be a great space to be when we're talking about healthcare and health tech data. I guess, we're going to touch on a couple areas, and maybe one we'll start off is, it's a mission-driven, sector. Obviously, when you join a company and it's kind of health focused, people want to be involved. They want to improve patient care. When you guys position the company, is that a selling point when you're trying to build a team that, come join us, we're mission driven?
It's a really good question. So many times I seek people based on what motivates them, but I'm always imprinting on why we started the company. Early in our conversations as founders, we were talking through ideas, we were getting to know each other, and Priya, who is a physician and one of our co-founders, told me a story of how she lost a life as a physician due to the fact that she didn't have medical data at the right time. And I was able to share my story as a patient with a heart condition with thousands of pages of medical records that no physician ever had or had reviewed. And so for us, we're very, very passionate about medical data, but my expectation isn't that people come on with a passion for medical data, but a passion for change and a passion maybe even for healthcare in general, knowing that our solution is one of the solutions out there that can really affect change and save lives.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's fantastic when, especially the founders connect with the mission on that kind of intimate level. I think all founders obviously love their product, right? I think that's a universal, they're in it, they're to win it. But when you have that slight dotted line, when you do you tell that story when you're hiring people? Is that a story that comes out as to kind of your why behind the product?
Yeah, we get asked that almost in every single interview. Why did you start the company? Why did you choose to do this? And we ended up sharing that story. And I tell them that I have Wolff Parkinson's and I was attached to an EKG as a kid. And, it took 5 years to be able to assess whether I needed to get a ablation procedure done on my heart. And the physicians kept redoing tests and redoing analysis and rerunning lab work and, redoing EKGs and other electrophysiology exams to finally figure out 5 years later that I needed a procedure that I could have had when I was 17. Right. So medical data has truly become a passion for me, and it's something that resonates well with people when we bring on board. We tell other stories as well, how we're helping our clients. We have a large oncological client that we do triage, and they do 100,000 patients a month, and they had a 20% triage error, which leads to continued illness, increased illness, and even in other cases, death, due to the fact that they missed triage, and we've brought that from 20% to 0. And so these stories of us actually saving lives is a really, really big selling point to our mission. Now, I don't think it's a selling point to the job. There are other factors on why people want to join teams, but I think when somebody comes on knowing these things and what our mission is underlying why we're doing what we're doing, they're very, very motivated to want to work with a company who is so mission driven.
Absolutely. And I guess as you're looking to build the team, I mean, early on, you are able to, tell that story. You're able to be in all those interview loops, or at some point in those interview loops. I mean, you're going to be a lot closer as you're growing, as you're scaling. how do you hope that story gets retold? Because you might be involved in still various parts of the interview process, I'm sure, for a while. But at some point, if you do hire at scale, or you're starting to hire at a slightly faster clip, I mean, you'll have a diminished role, I'm assuming, to a certain degree. But how do you hope that story gets told if you start kind of getting a little separation from each and every candidate?
Sure. So I'll answer that question twofold. Number one, we have what we're calling our Predoc culture formula that we share with managers. This is kind of our stone tablet formula, written in stone from the early days, formalized in a way that's consumable for managers to be able to identify why they were hired, and then what they should be looking for as well in interviews. That's number one. Number two, I am involved in the last stage of every finalist that we have touched, and I will continue to be involved in the last stage of every finalist to ensure that the type of people that we bring on are, one, treated with the same value and care as the very first people that we brought on. Our values are high agency, urgency, meritocracy, and transparency. And we want to probe into those. We want to walk through each value with each candidate. We want to see organic reactions to those values when we explain what they are. We want to see stories that on how they can relate to those values. We want to listen to who they were as a person and who they are both personally and professionally before telling them those values, so we can assess for ourselves how they align, right? And so those values, and it's one of the reasons why we've had zero turnover in almost 3 years. It's because those values are so ingrained in each individual and how we operate, and when we need to rally, and when we need to get things done, and when we need to drive to be better, and when we need to share information, how we're transparent, that each of us is kind of playing the same game, driving the same car, pushing forward in the same way on the same team. You look left and right in our organization, and it's honestly amazing. You have these really big hitters who have come on, and our VP of product, I'll quote her. She said, "We came on, I was a big hitter, but when you enter an organization where everyone's a big hitter, then you're not a big hitter anymore." And the idea is that you're sitting as a link in the chain being only as strong as its weakest link, and you look left and right, and everyone is as strong as you are stronger. And that's kind of the culture that we wanted to build, and we strive to continue to build. And outside of those core values, it's, I want your personal goals to become our goals. I mean, we had somebody in the company whose goal was his wife to become a stay-home mother, and he needed to make a certain amount of money. And I committed that if he was to succeed here, that we would all succeed, and I would get him there. And 11 months later, we were able to make those things come true for him. He's being headhunted by other companies. He will never leave here because we cared about what he cared about. And why would he care about what we care about if I don't care about him? So personal incentives, personal motivations, who they are, what their values are, where do they see themselves in the future? What does that look like? Not just 1 to 5, but 5 to 10 years. Does that align with where we want to go? And then obviously the company values I had already touched on.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually great. I love the fact that people, are bought in. They want to stay. They want to be part of the solution. And when you look at, I guess, what you see as your imprint on the company, and I think founder imprint's different for every organization, because depending on the type of founder, the type of culture they want to set in place, they want to really have tight control of it and have no deviation. They want everyone to be a value add. There's everything in between. There's so many different, we can't possibly cover. When you look at your imprint, obviously you talked about your story, you want to be involved in all the interviews, and obviously you have co-founders, but how do you kind of envision your imprint? Do you want it to start changing as you are adding people? I mean, that evolution, or is it like, listen, this is the core, we'll adjust, but we really want to keep to those core values, or the core values something where they need to be re-examined in different growth stages? What are your philosophies there?
So I do believe that we will need different merit at different stages. Like somebody who's a generalist, a jack of all trades, is not who we're going to need at the final stages before acquisition. We're going to need somebody hyper focused on, not so cog in the wheel, I hate that idea, but the reality is somebody who's hyper skilled in a single area. The merit might fluctuate. The high urgency, where they have autonomy and authority to make decisions over what they own, to not be their own blocker. The level of urgency that they're driving like they're hitting a deadline, like we're competing at all times, or like our competition is chasing us. And transparency, the ask anything, show everything if you're part of the team. Those will, I believe, will never change. The merit, the ideology behind meritocracy will never change, but I think we will have more focused merit. The idea of upskilling yourself to, eat what you kill, to bring your own value and continue to drive and grow, those ideas won't go away. But we might have more focus and a narrower outlook on what merit looks like as we need more hyper-specific roles in the future. I believe that we'll be sticking to the core of who we are and probably not deviating much from that core.
Absolutely. I guess when we're talking about startups, equity comes into play. People join for various reasons, but equity is one of them. When you think about equity, and it sounds like everyone's bought in, they want to be on board, and who knows, right? The company might be very successful and never exits, or it might. When you look at equity, and I know you yourself have kind of gone through this, what are your thoughts when people are joining? Obviously, they take a little bit bigger risk to join. Should there be commensurate equity adjustment for that? Is that something that's fair in rewarding people for taking an earlier risk?
I agree with that. It's also a little bit dealer's choice, right? When somebody comes on, they're going to know what motivates them. Sometimes it might be equity. Sometimes it might be salary. Sometimes it might be the journey because they're growing and they're early in their career. Or sometimes they're later in their career, they're looking for stability and less the risk itself, and their risk appetite is different. But in the type of person that we're looking for that is really hungry, maybe has a young family, maybe has a significant other that, they're starting to think about that life, their drive and their mission personally motivates them at a higher level to be a higher achiever in some ways. Oftentimes, equity has become at our company, and I think because we have a track record now of our value per share growing, it becomes more enticing. And obviously, as our equity grows, we give out smaller equity packages, but still 4 to 5 times the amount of equity that I received at early stage startups as well. Just because I think if we're generous with our equity and there's real ownership stake in the types of people that meet these values that we have on board, that they're tied to the outcome of the company as much as we are. They see a future where they're going to be getting $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million even for the earlier guys, maybe even higher than that. Some of the earliest guys could be sitting between $2.5 and $5 million payout if we were to sell for $1 billion, right? And so they're seeing a real connection to the work that they put in and the outcome that could be. And I find a lot of value in that level of commitment and connection to the work they're doing. And so for me, it's worth it to give a greater stake if possible.
Love it. I guess when we're talking about, ensuring that we're building the team, want the right players on board, when you are going through the interview process and you obviously you do due diligence. It's really hard. I think it's one of the hardest things is, especially at startups, but just generally hiring, it's hard because you get so few glimpses at people. And obviously everyone's on their best behavior for the most part, right? We get some outliers, right. But everyone, and you do the technical assessment. You're the CTO. Obviously the technical assessment tells you everything. We are seeing a rise in people trying to game the system. They've always tried to game the system. People that want to game the system are going to try to game the system. How are you guys? I guess the question really
how are we beating it?
Well, I guess the question is as we're seeing more, LLMs, chat powered tools to help people, through interview processes, it's becoming a bit of an issue at some organizations. I guess some people are seeing it earlier than others, but are you guys thinking about that already? Are you doing anything to make sure as you're hiring, scaling, that people are actually, the people you're talking to are actually having the knowledge they claim to have?
So it's a fantastic question. And honestly, it's such a open-ended question. There's a lot of conversation that could come out of this, I think. Yes. Short answer, yes. Longer answer, there is not a single person that we have hired on the engineering team, whether it be data analysis, machine learning, data science, engineering, QA, project management, doesn't matter. Anywhere on the team, even product as well, where we have not gotten a first network connection to come work with us, somebody that we know and trust from within our network. For a long time, the first 20 employees were people that I called myself across every department: sales, customer success, engineering, everyone. I called them and they came to work. And because I built these deep relationships. And then the next 8 employees or 9 employees have been from first connections from guys that I deeply trust that are on the team now. And so we're building this momentum to where we've worked with hundreds of engineers. Each of us has probably worked with 50 to 100 engineers throughout our career. And we're picking the top 1 or 2 that we know that would be amazing to have on board. And they'll come in and do an interview. But we're posting for jobs and we're doing interviews, and we're spending and what feels like an immeasurable amount of time doing interviews with people who apply. And what we're running into is a very, very heavy reliance on chatbots, AI, while they're doing the interview. And then on the other side, which is crazy, we're running into the cyber slave trade over in concentration camps in China, where North Korean men are being pushed into these interviews with us. And that's something that we've had to, between that and people using AI to try to cheat the interviews, we've run into that a lot. And it's just turned out to be a bit of a mess. And we end up just turning back to our networks, which, who do you know? How well do you know them? How were they performing at their last jobs? And the answer is, this guy was the best guy I ever worked with. We got to bring him on. And then we do these interviews, and it comes out to be true, right? And that's how we're kind of getting around that, honestly. It's just really buckling down into our network and the team having such faith in the company and such belief in us as founders to then feel like they can do the same and bring people on board with no other incentive than working with people who they've loved to work with in the past.
I guess at some point, is there, once the network gets exhausted, I mean, at some point you might have to go to market. You're already seeing some of the ways people are trying to adjust. How do you envision and I guess, the days come, you guys may be down Series B, Series C, you're a much bigger company, 3, 4, 5x headcount. Do you envision embracing, hey, let's all just hop on, I want to see you use ChatGPT, let's see you prompt it. I mean, if you're going to try to use it behind the scenes, let's have you use it openly and see how you do? Or is it a case of that probably doesn't help evaluate talent enough, and you do have to kind of be vigilant and guarding who's trying to, have something feeding in their ear, reading off a screen? That's
exactly right. I think right now, in the way we're hiring, our most junior person has 9.5, almost 10 years of experience, right? In the way that we're hiring, it's people who have done the trade, who know what they're talking about, can explain complex topics without an assistance or support or crutch from any type of chatbot or AI or LLM assisting them along the way. Would there be a day as we continue to grow where we're more accepting of that? Maybe, but the reality is that the level of seniority that we have in-house, I'd put it up against anybody. I really would. I mean, we have guys who come from other companies consistently through the network within first and second connections that are staff level engineers, principal level engineers at these other companies who rank internally for us at a level 2, level 3 senior software engineer. And so our standards are really high. We only take on people that we trust. And we also only take on people who can explain these more advanced topics when it comes to software engineering or machine learning without the need or crutch of AI. I don't think we want to get to the point where we have to rely on those types of tactics. But hey, I mean, we're following the market as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, 100% makes sense. And I guess, like when you are going through these interview loops, and obviously you guys are gathering feedback, you're ensuring everyone wants to be on the same page. Obviously there'll be differing views on a hire. When you internally look to hire, is there a fairly set, I guess, standard as to feedback and how feedback is viewed and potentially what has to be agreed upon to make a hire? Or can people make strong cases and advocate and overcome a potential part of the interview?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple cases where they didn't know the tech stack, where they which is obviously would be a massive deal breaker for most companies, but their alignment to our values were incredible. They spoke programming, not just some like React boot camp. So I felt very confident on their ability to get to speed. There are ways around specific parts of the interview. There's not a way around the culture formula. And we've had guys who were incredible matches technically, but were a 50% or less match on the culture formula. And we had to negate the rest of the value that they brought. We had to eliminate them from the interview process because they weren't going to drive the company forward the way we wanted. They were going to be looking for a list of tasks instead of looking for where the next problems were to solve. They were going to be reactive instead of proactive. They were going to be wanting to work in a bubble instead of transparent, working as a team, right? There's these different things that we see in the interview process, but we've had guys who are incredible when it comes to the culture and incredible when it comes to experience, but we've had to send them courses to go get up to speed on what technology stack we're using. And for most companies, I think that would be a deal breaker, but for us, we're succeeding the way we are technically because we're looking for people who are just as driven as the rest of us. And if you speak the broader programming as a language instead of relying on Python or Go or Node or whatever your backend flavor of choice is, then you're just going to be able to adjust quickly and just pick up the API docs or pick up the language docs and go to town, right? So yeah, there absolutely are ways around specific parts of our assessment. But there's not a way around our culture formula.
Love it. And maybe just out of curiosity, you guys are obviously, within a space where lots of various different parts of tech fit. When you look at the team and you look at the team makeup and the topology, obviously you're a CTO. I'm assuming there's a lot of AI that goes into Predoc. We'll leave that for a separate discussion. But when you look at the team and you start thinking about how the team topology looks, where AI sits, where data sits, everything is now engineering, right? Like there's not a single thing that can happen that doesn't include coding of some kind at some level. We won't talk about who's doing it. We'll just mention that. When you look at that and you look at the way the team's being built, have you looked at the topology? Does AI get folded under you? Does AI have its own lane? How does the topology look, and what does it potentially look like moving forward as you are going to grow?
Sure. So, I mean, this kind of goes to team structure as well. I mean, we don't hire true managers. We hire super ICs who also have manager functions as well. So we have our director of AI. He is a true super IC, incredible individual contributor, also dealing with AI architecture, as well as formerly was our lead machine learning engineer and very, very much hands-on deploying stuff daily, right? He just brought our dev instance down and brought it back up this morning to release indexation 2.0 into our dev environment to get it ready for the staging and production, right? And this is not a one-off. This is just how he works regularly. And so to answer your question I guess in a shorter fashion, we're very, very flat and we want to stay flat. There probably won't ever be, a chief data science officer or chief data officer or anything like that. I mean, it's going to be CTO, and we might have director of data, director of engineering, director of AI, all still being very high level ICs, right? Learning their way into management slowly, but contributing more to the bottom line and to our deliverables than to traditional management. And even in my sense, sure, I am a true traditional manager in our organization as a CTO, where we have about 25, 30 people on the engineering team, but 25, closer to 25. But at the same time, I'm still looking at the roadmap, and I'm still sitting down with the designer and doing designs, and I'm still sitting down with engineering and drawing lines on diagrams to try to figure out what the right architecture is with our director of engineering, and sitting down with our director of AI and mapping out some of our newer workflows for how, our Pantheon models are going to function in computer use. And it's very, very hands-on, and even functionally as an IC as well myself at times, less and less as the years go on. But I mean, it's a very slow movement. It's not me one day waking up and going, oh, I'm going to be a full-time manager now. And I don't think there will be a morning where our directors wake up and go, hey, I'm only a manager. And even if there's a title promotion to VP, functionally their role might be the same. And it might be more just for optics or perspective or a pay raise for them to receive that because they deserve it. But in reality, all of our guys are flat, and all of our guys are still functioning as super ICs.
I love that. Yeah, I actually think it's when we're talking about team building, I think a lot of times we focus on certain pieces and parts of the hiring process. I actually think the management and topology, the two, how they are set up for a particular company and how the company wants to grow, I think it's actually vitally important. And you mentioned, obviously, you are you're involved in a lot of the process, and you are the CTO. You will have the right people reporting into you with the right levels of information. You want to stay flat. When you think about that management for yourself, when you think about the level of or the number of people you can actually handle, I guess, do you kind of have you started thinking about how many people can directly report into you? Is there a view of after a certain point I need some help, or I need to potentially divest some of my own functions 100%. To other people?
I only have 5 people directly reporting to me. I completely agree. Our directors, for example, our director of engineering, Ethan Brown, he has the largest team currently on software engineering, but he's more functionally an HR manager because we also have our tech leads who have their own pod of 3 people below each of them, right? And so there's a couple layers of general management, but nobody is functionally in a true manager role, if that makes sense. As much as the pod leads are in functional requirements, so is Ethan. And as much as business requirements are involved for Ethan to address, is as much as I'm in the roadmap, right? And so each of us still have our IC work to do. But as far as direct reports go, yeah, we try to limit that. we try to limit how much work we can do. I'm sorry, not how much work we can do. We try to limit how many people are rolling up to us to be able to enable us to do more IC work. Because we don't ever want to be in a scenario where somebody is sitting at 8 to 12 direct reports with no ability to actually contribute to production code or production product or production design. We need people to be able to actually do real work as well as manage a couple people under them.
I love that. I guess maybe last question for you. It sounds like you've got lots of moving parts, and I'm always fascinated. This is more of a personal question. Sometimes I like to ask is context switching. To me, is what hurts me the most. I don't know. It takes me a lot of time to contact. So when I get done with the podcast, I already know that I need like 30 minutes before I actually can go do some work, because I need to kind of like rev down my Q&A type of mindset to being able to focus. When you look at yourself and you are doing a lot of different things, context switching is hard. Do you do anything to help yourself? Do you time block? Do you like to structure certain works bundled together? What do you do to help with your context switching?
I gotta say, I'm super bad at doing two things at once. Right? I am.
I'm with you on that.
I'm terrible. I'm terrible at it. But I have gotten really good at flipping switches on and off. I compartmentalize things into a little black box, set that on the shelf really fast, pick it up, and I have, some days I have between 4 and 13 calls, and if those are, one call is talking about finalizing roadmap, the next call is talking about, our metrics for evaluation on how some of our models are performing. And the next call is about another vendor that's potentially data provider. I just got to snap my fingers and switch. I would say I get to decompress at the end of the day. My wife is kind and allows me to come up from working remote in my home office, go upstairs, and just decompress for 15 to 20 minutes before jumping out so I can process everything that I've done during the day, because I don't have the time to process in between. So it's a context switch I've gotten good at, but to process everything I'm context switching between, I also need that time to decompress. I just position it at the end of the day. That way, when I'm looking from one thing to another, I'm gathering facts, I'm gathering information, doing a lot of potentially note-taking even, and then at the end of the day, just decompressing through all of it, putting things where they need to go, pointing things in which direction they need to go, placing things to the people they need to go to, or responding to the messages or emails, and then back to home life after work.
Fantastic. Alex, I really appreciate your time, chatting with us about team building, about, being a CTO, founder at a growing startup. If somebody does have a question, based on something we've mentioned or talked about, is there a good way of touching base with you?
Yeah, absolutely. We have my LinkedIn, obviously, which is easy to do, which I can send you, as well as my email, which is totally fine. If anyone wants to ask questions or send messages, we're always open. If it gets lost in the email thread, poke me on both places.
There you go. Awesome. Alex, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing, Amir.
Absolutely. All right. That's it for this episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Two things. One, Alex walked us through a lot of his philosophies around team building, about scaling. We touched a little bit on interview process and how he is or is not seeing some of these issues around people leveraging other tools and helping them through the process. We also talked a little bit about equity and his managing context switching, and I'm going to have to maybe do a follow-up episode and see how he manages that context switching at a snap of a finger, because I certainly cannot do that. So I want to learn that trick, because that would give me a lot of my day back. So I'm going to have to put that down as a to-do for myself, Alex. So I appreciate that. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going. Please share this episode with others. Thank you. Be back again. Bye.